Absolutely. The very first thing I want to do this evening is thank you for inviting me, inviting Carolyn to be part of this great evening. And it's great. It's a great honor for me to be among heroes, to be among veterans, to be among patriots, and also pilgrims, those who went forth, those who advanced the cause for life. At a time in which we've had some great theology, culture of life versus the culture of death. Our Holy Father has spoken numerous times about that concept. Even politicians now speak about it as well. But you know, that great theology did not come with a playbook. But you, the pioneers, I talked with some of you, I got a sense that you are engaged in the life cause. And you are each day that you help advance that cause, you are being part of a great history. The writing of the playbook. The generations from here forth will have the advantage of knowing, well, that's how you do that. That's how you work to restore culture. So I'm delighted to be here and honored to share just a few moments with you. Abraham Lincoln had great advice for people like me who do public speaking. He said very simply, a great presentation should have a very compelling beginning, an exciting close, and absolutely nothing in the middle. However, tonight, because this is a $5,000 plate dinner, I'm going to give you some certificates. A little bit about the Vitae Foundation. I'm president, as was mentioned a moment ago. Vitae means life, a life foundation. And over the years, a lot of people say, how did you come up with such a name? Of course, it means life. But we also picked a name that the media could not pronounce. I've heard Vita, I've heard Vita Vita, that had all kinds of interesting combinations. One of the most unusual, however, was a young, wise guy type reporter. He said, Carl Landwehr, you're the president of the foundation that promotes hair growth. Vita, I guess somehow he's connected that. And I said to him, you know what, if that were a true statement, by now, I look like Donald Trump. Cannot be true. We're not here going for it. We are about the business of first and foremost doing research. Vitae has spent well over $2 million. If we were in business, we would call it defining and researching the product. The product being a message. A 30-second commercial, a billboard, an internet ad that finds that young woman at what we call the now moment. All of a sudden, she does a test, pregnancy test. Oh my God, she says, I'm pregnant. Now, what do I do? That is where the message of life has to begin, if it hasn't been there earlier. Why the now moment? Because this is a debate over who will control in her mind how she resolves fear. We'll talk about fear in a little more detail in just a minute. The approach that Vitae has taken after over 30-some years of research uses all forms of media, but particularly the internet. I'll tell you why. This is a business model, a marketing model that business would use to sell a product. Obviously, we're not selling a product, but we're involved in a decision. Decision in business is to buy a product. The decision in this issue of abortion is to make sure that she comes to our pro-life store, the pregnancy care center, and not the abortion store, our competition. So when I tell you, it is a theological issue. It's a philosophical issue. But from our perspective, if we're going to reduce the number of abortions, change a culture, we've got to approach this as a consumer issue. The abortion businesses are marketing and selling abortion. They see it as a business. We too have to be very shrewd marketers. Governor Robert Casey, probably of any I've ever heard, any people, any speakers, had the most profound impact on how we look at this issue from this perspective. When asked about, well, who can win this debate over abortion, He simply said, whoever can communicate the most effectively will win the hearts and minds of Americans. He didn't say education, he didn't say legislation, he didn't say political action. Those are all important. It's all in how you communicate across those dominions. So communication is what VTE is all about. Essentially, the goal of VTE is to help moms and dads. If we can help mom and dad make a wise decision about their child, we believe they will be blessed. We've seen it so many times when they make those tough decisions. Saving babies, helping little kids just have a chance to live. That's all they want, a chance to live. Rich or poor, young or old, black or white, makes no difference. Just a chance to live. That's what we're about. That's what you're about. That's why you're here. That's why you believe in the sanctity of human life. To say it in business terms, what our message is to, for our Pregnancy Care Center, we want to teach them, help them, utilize the power of mass media to own their market in the trade zone in which they serve. That's a business-like principle. I want more people to come to my store. And if I do a better job of keeping them out of my competition's store, this store will go out of business. And that's important.
That's right.
We want them to own the local market, the trade area in which they serve. Now, some will say, well, that's kind of a wild and crazy idea. Back in 1974, I became involved in a pro-life cause. About 10 years later, when I became concerned that we ought to be doing something about the heart and soul. The heart and soul. Of essence, the heart and soul. Began. Let's go back historically, and I want you to leave here with a very key and very critical point. History demonstrates that this culture can change. We can restore this value. We can reduce abortion numbers measurably. Because you see, in 1860, and listen very, very carefully, 1860, abortions per capita in this country were higher then than now. Per capita. Per capita. Not many people know that. I guarantee you that you will not hear that on broadcast media. You will not hear the next fact as well. You will not hear anywhere unless you really did get down, drill down, and read. It was the early feminists who, in 1860, were about the business of helping women secure the right to vote in that era. They were also about the business of helping young women avoid abortions. It was Susan B. Anthony, in addition to writing the Equal Rights Amendment, the first one ever penned. She called abortion, and remember this, she was the first to ever say abortion was male oppression. Fascinating piece of history, but was even more fascinating. By 1910, 50 years later, that per capita number of abortions was the lowest in our nation's history. A rather incredible article, you may enjoy reading it at some point. If I were to get your name or email, I will send it to you. Written by Marvin Olasky for the Heritage Foundation, which all this data is there for your review. What's also fascinating is the laws that were overturned by Roe versus Wade, found to be unconstitutional at the state level, were the very laws that originated from the work of the early feminists who brought the abortion issue front and center in America. A lot of people will say, okay, so what? Can this still be won? This is a new era. This is a new day and time. But I don't think so. Because today we have secular humanism. We all have heard lectures about that. In the 1860s, a similar theology was occurring, driven by the Spiritists. They advocated wife swapping. They advocated a strange belief that there was no God, similar to the ideologies of today. coming from the secular humanists. So the cultures were quite similar. So let me share with you why I believe this issue can be won, and demonstrate a few key points as to why we are winning. Number one, the number of abortion providers in this country has dropped by half since 1973. About 1,200, 1,500 or so. Back in those days, 40 some years ago. Today, about 600. What's interesting is there are now more pregnancy care centers across America, about 2,500, give or take a few. You can see there's more help available to women to carry to term than there is to abort. Public opinion is changing immensely. Back in the days when I became first involved, we were lucky at 31%, 35% of the people would say in a poll, would they label themselves I'm pro-life? At best, 30-some%. Then, now it's well over 51%. At 72%, you find abortion is immoral. We have what Carl Landwehr calls the beginning of the tipping point toward a culture of life. I'm going to teach you in a minute. I'm going to share with you how and why that 51% is critical as we advance the cause for life using the business, the marketing model. Obviously, you're going to ask me, well, why are we winning? What's driving that? Can we bottle that? Can we do more of that? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. First and foremost, one of the strongest allies is modern medicine. Modern medicine has given us the ultrasound. The ability of this incredible piece of science to say to mom, here's your baby. Listen to the heartbeat. Statistically, as high as 90%, I've heard lower, higher, but in that range, say 70 to 90, of the women who see their baby on ultrasound will carry to term, make that decision. The aha moment. I didn't know that my baby had a heartbeat. Also, fascinatingly enough, we're now treating, modern medicine is treating babies as patients, tiny patients. We're doing heart surgery, brain surgery. The question is this: how do you do brain surgery? How can you possibly do brain surgery on a blob of cells or massive protoplasm? We caught the advocates of abortion in the act of being themselves, i.e. lying to the American people, to women. Secondly, the communication industry is a fabulous, fabulous ally. What VT wants to do is figure out how that industry, all the latest and greatest ways to sell a product, can be used to make information available to women to make a wise decision. For example, I became involved through VT. TV was quite a deal. How fascinating it was that we could communicate with women instead of men simply by buying a different type of TV ad, a show, for women versus men. Science has moved so fast. Using the internet, we can now communicate with women who are on the verge, days if not hours away from having an abortion for much less cost. So you see, the internet has been tremendous advancement. And that's our whole mission, is to figure out how to use that and bring this science to work in pregnancy care centers across America. Research is critical. I can't tell you enough about research. But we have to do the right kind of research. There's linear research, polling data, but if you're a politician, that's fine. But if you're trying to talk to a young woman, polling data is never going to give you the information you need. Remember, we talked about abortion being a consumer decision. Thus, it's a decision that's made on the right side of the brain, the emotional side of the brain. Therefore, we commissioned a Fortune 500 market research. We spent well over $2 million over the last 15 years figuring out how do we communicate to that side of the brain that makes the decision to have an abortion. To say something to the right side of the brain that's meaningful, significant, that will shift her away from having that decision to kill the child, to save the child. One more glimpse at science. We're going to do it here in a matter of a couple of weeks. The science is there. We all, or most of us, have cell phones, smartphones. Well, young women are on those things all the time. We know that. We can geographically position a message on her cell phone while she is waiting for her abortion in an abortion clinic. The science is there. It requires us, as concerned Catholics and Christians and believers, to utilize this science intended for Protestants. Use that same science to help young women make a decision to carry the term. We take a look at the message, 3 M's. Message, medium, where we place it, and messenger. A lot of people thought I was a little bit on the crazy side, but I suggested that we take this message about life during the World Series in college sports. They couldn't understand that. Here's the science. It's all about the image. Marshall McLuhan was correct. The medium is the message. People who put a lot of money on ads during the World Series are not likely to blow up abortion clinics. That's the takeaway for the strategy of college sports. You're also talking to the influencer of this young woman's decision. You know, I need to tell you a little bit about sociology. I need to ask a couple questions before we get into some of this heavy-duty stuff. You know, how many people know what a sociologist does? Raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, well, that's twice as many as last night. I'm obviously asking the wrong question. How many people here tonight really care what a sociologist does? Funny story, my mom is 98. And to this very day, I believe a sociologist is an incredible contribution to the cause. There's not many of us. Quick, take your picture of me. There's only 3 or 4 of us who are in the world of sociology and also pro-life. So anyway, back to my mom's story. She thinks a sociologist is somebody that goes to school for a long time and can't find a job. Let's talk a little bit about what we called earlier the business model, the marketing model. There are 3 components for it to work effectively. Brand awareness, brand loyalty. Those of you who are in sales, you know what I'm talking about. And lastly, brand advocacy. When all these 3 components work together, lies what you say. So first and foremost, what is a brand? Well, a brand is a product. Pepsi is a brand. Coke is a brand. Pregnancy care centers and the help that they provide is a brand. So that's what we mean by a brand in this context. So briefly, let's talk about brand awareness. Here's some things that we face in this world of marketing, the value, and the sanctity of human life. Nearly all the pregnancy care centers across America, all 2,500 of them, have a different name. Some are pretty right on, some are pretty terribly wrong. Perhaps the worst case I've ever heard in Seattle. Pregnancy Care Center, wanting to market to young women to come for help. The name of that center was Loving Baskets. Did you get the point? You see where we're going. So, there's ways to deal with that. Now, no one knows where they're located. Unless you're involved with them locally, you will not know them. That's a problem. We don't know what the name means. Pregnancy Help Center, Pregnancy Care Center, Open House, Birthright, Life Choice. One thing we have found, if they would all systematically use the word options somewhere in their marketing, We would have unity in message. And options is a big word because people, when they're struggling with fear, want to have an option. Somehow that word option begins to remove her fear. Now the power of the internet, I mentioned that a moment ago. We can find her because we know what she's searching for. We know what she's looking for. We know what words she types in as keywords. And that's where we want to be. Because if we can make certain, and now that we know how to do it, we can. A Breakthrough Care Center will come up first, second, or third on the search page. When she types in Mary Fort Myers, abortion services, you want the Breakthrough Care Center name to come up, number 1. You want to drive the Planned Parenthood name down, down, down. Now, a lot of Breakthrough Care Centers will say, I can't, clients don't come in. One of the first things we look at, they won't know this unless you tell them. The abortion industry will post negative reviews on your website, about your website. So it's no wonder if you get a negative review and a woman checks out the center, they're not going to come in. So you see, it is indeed all about marketing, all about the internet. One really incredible way, in addition to the internet, to help find that young woman, we can find her. Now we can even find her in an abortion clinic, waiting for her abortion. Just like was mentioned here, a little business card, just like the one on your table. Think for a minute. Remember that 51%? 51% of the people like what we're doing. If each one of those people, particularly in your churches, on some Sunday morning, the pastor said, Breakthrough Care Center in our community, our trade area, where around our church, here's where you will find it. I would like for all of you here today to put this little palm card, we call it, in your billfold, in your purse, on your refrigerator. So in the event someone at the plant, maybe your friend on the golf course, happens to bring up the conversation, my granddaughter's pregnant, I don't know what to do. Pull the card out and say, here's a place that you can find really good help for her. Remember that. Now, let's talk about brand loyalty. Since we don't know where the center is located, since we don't know what the name is and what it means, it's going to be really difficult to believe that the service provided there is trustworthy. That's a big challenge for many people. In fact, the abortion industry has launched what is called the Urban Initiative. It sounds like a jobs program. It's a strategy to undercut the credibility of Breakthrough Care Centers across America. We ran into that in New York. Have a great campaign on the subways of New York. Mayor Bloomberg did not like what we were doing, did not like what the Breakthrough Care Centers were doing. So they passed an ordinance requiring all the ads that were on the subways. On the front door of the Breakthrough Care Center, they have to list all the things that they don't provide. You know, that's kind of like asking and requiring by law. Take it to the extreme. A sign on McDonald's saying we do not sell pizza. You see how bizarre this thing called the Urban Initiative is undergoing. In Seattle, great campaign. Fortunately, that piece of state legislation didn't pass. But would have required our billboards to have all of these things that they don't do at Breakthrough Care Center in 5 foreign languages, one of which was an Indian tribe, a very obscure Indian tribe. Very few people even knew about it. By the time you see all the different languages of what they don't provide at that center, where we were helping market, you couldn't find out what they did market. So that's part of the strategy under the Urban Initiative generated by the abortion clinic businesses to discredit the Breakthrough Care Centers, which is why we teach Breakthrough Care Centers to band together with the churches. So the churches know if a pastor says, here, keep this in your billfold, you may need it sometime. to help another woman find help, the benefit of the palm card, helps establish credibility. The last thing in this market strategy is brand advocates. We all have to be brand advocates. A brand advocate is someone, and we all do it, we like a product, and someone will say, what type of beer do you drink? What type of clothes do you wear? What's your favorite car? We all have a favorite product. And we many times go out of our way to tell others about our favorite product. So that's what we have to be. We have to be champions of the local pregnancy care center to bring credibility, awareness, and brand loyalty to the centers. So what can you expect from a result using the marketing strategies as I just described? 3 things. Making abortion unthinkable, unprofitable, and lastly, unpopular. When those 3 things are occurring, the culture of life is beginning to emerge because we're pushing back the culture of death. I want to talk briefly about challenges and we'll wrap it up. I mentioned a moment ago urban initiative. Watch for that. It sounds like jobs. It's not. It's a challenge. It's a strategy to downgrade, to demote incredible services that are available in pregnancy care centers across America. The second challenge is Obamacare. Because Obamacare, in order for it to deliver all that it promises, has to have abortion and euthanasia. Abortion because there's where a lot of resources are consumed. At the young age, making sure this young child is never given a chance to live because of the amount of resources they will consume at that end of the continuum. Euthanasia on the other side. Older people consume a lot of resources. And so for that concept to get home, they have to have abortion and euthanasia. Apathy, yet another reason. I'm not going to ask you to hold your hand up, but how many of you know the name of the closest pregnancy care center in the trade area of your church, the service area? Great. Some. Thank you. That's critical because now you are in a position to know where they're located. You can speak to the incredible services that they provide. And how nice would it be if that 51% of the American people I mentioned a moment ago could do the very same thing? That's opportunities just waiting for us. Yet one more example that's a bit troubling. It's a slow, infectious kind of thing that we need to talk about. The encroachment of European-style socialism in the American culture. We had a great campaign in the UK. Unfortunately, as we were putting our TV strategies together, the government-run TV would not allow commercials to air. But we figured out a way to get around that. We tried to intercept women coming from Ireland across the channel to have abortions. We knew we could do that by placing time on the theaters where they would wait the evening before their abortion. But that cost money. You know, it's very sad to say this. It was easier for us to raise money in America, save babies in the UK, because the people in the UK would not fund charitable giving. They believe that the government does charitable good works. That's a problem. It's slowly encroaching into our American culture. Got a very quick example. I visited my grandfather's town some years ago in Aachen, Germany. I went to the very same church, a Catholic church, built in the 1600s. And after church, I was speaking with my cousin, Friedrich Reinke. I said, Friedrich, I noticed a brand new roof on your church. How much did that cost? Oh, nothing. Nothing. I said, Friedrich, I guess somebody donated. No. The government paid for the roof on my grandfather's Catholic but surely European-style socialism, if it allows to progress and infestate our culture. The churches of America and the pastors will be employees of the government. The churches will no longer provide the good works. The government will provide those good works. So as we sit here tonight, we have to look to the future. Wayne Gretzky was asked how it was that he became such a great hockey player. You know what he said? I never skate where the puck is. I always skate where it's going. We have to watch day by day where the American culture is going. How will we secure this protection for little kids and their moms with that type of culture on the horizon? Yet another example is secular humanism. So many people now believe there is no God, and if there is, it's one that I kind of determine myself if something is right or wrong. It's a very dangerous philosophy. Remember the Spiritists? Keep those thoughts in mind. I'll close with a story that kind of wraps it up. Everything I just shared with you this evening, don't think about it for the next couple minutes. The story I'm about to tell you is far more important in many ways, because it gets to the heart and soul of this issue. A story about a man, O'Brien. I was late on the plane. I got on finally, squeezed into the aisle or the window seat. Lady in the middle, and then O'Brien was there. You know how it goes. What do you do? Where are you going? And I say, well, I was going to do a polite presentation, maybe similar to this evening. And Nan said to me, that is really exciting and wonderful. And I come to my polite point of view because of what I do for a living. And she said, you need to know that I was, as a young girl, I helped my roommate. I drove her to the worship club. But that wasn't so bad, she said. It's what she does in her everyday work that brought her to her point of view of the sacredness of human life. Nan O'Brien told me that she was a medium. And a medium is one who communicates with the deceased on behalf of the living person. To find out, did they make it? Where are they? And I said to Nan, what is it that these women, why do they come to you for the services that you offer? And I believe the plane could have fallen out of the sky, I wouldn't have known. She said, these women come to me by the hundreds, by the thousands, to find out if the child they aborted will forgive them in heaven. That's the essence of this debate. The heart and soul of mom and dad and the little kid. You've been a gracious audience, and I'd love to answer any questions that you might have.